immigration, Mark Miller, who is our immigration minister, was like, yeah, so we're going to increase from 1,000 refugees to 5,000 from Gaza. And people are like, huh? Or, well, what are we doing here? Well, it's like, well, they're in danger. We need to help them. We need to make sure that they don't get killed. So Canada can open its doors. We'll take care of them. And people are like, we get the humanitarian aspect of this, but we literally can't house them. We have nowhere for them to go. What are we trying to do here? And this has now created this divide and conversation piece in a lot of friend groups and happening at the political level where it's like, do we let them in? Do we not? Are you racist for not wanting to bring them in? Are you not racist and are you just being thoughtful? This is the tension that's happening in the country now about immigration as well. And that will lead us into the statistics side of this story.
Yeah, well, I think you hit the nail right on the head. That's the crux of it, right? Is the heart of it. What do you do with a group of people that need to be housed and that are, in terrible conditions right now? Whether you fall on the pro-Palestinian or the pro-Israel, it doesn't matter. There's a bunch of people, they don't have homes anymore, whether through fault of their own or no fault of their own. They need a home. And for some reason, Canada's decided that we need to be that home. And that's the part that confuses me. I'm like, why are you telling people to come from a country next to the equator where they've never had snow before, where they do not speak the language, where they do not share the religion, where they don't share the same social cultural values? Why are you taking that group of people and bringing them to our country? Why wouldn't you say hey, countries that share the same family structures, share the same values, share the same religion, share the same language, where the barriers would be so much lower to getting ahead? Because that's the other part of it too, is how do we set these folks up for success? Are we automatically putting them at a disadvantage by bringing them somewhere where it's just a world of difference? And that's what I think is the travesty in this, is that you're not setting people up for success. You're setting them up for failure once they get here, and you're pissing off the Canadian public at the same time. Because right now we have an unprecedented amount of tent cities, and you're saying, let's just dump more people on it. And you know what? It doesn't even stop at the refugees in that part of the world. It's just immigration in general in this country. We're on track to add another 500,000 people. Do you know what housing starts were last year? I'll give you the housing starts for last year. So housing starts in 2023 declined by 7%, according to the CMHC. So recording 223,000 starts. That's a 25% decline in single family homes. So the immigration minister, when he actually got out there to talk about it too, he goes, oh, and don't worry, the immigration isn't having any effect on the housing. I'm like, oh my God. We added 500,000 people last year and we only built 220,000 homes. It doesn't, you're not even building enough homes for the people who live here, let alone doubling that in population that you're bringing in. It's foolish. So to me, it's so tone deaf. And then the other part of it too is why is it that the rest of the Arab nations in the Middle East, why are they not opening their doors? And, let's say we do take 5,000 folks in. Okay. There's, 2.3 million people in Gaza. Why isn't Egypt taking some? Why isn't Jerusalem opening their doors? Or sorry, not Jerusalem, Jordan. Yeah, Jerusalem would be a better place for it. But why isn't Jordan opening their doors? Why isn't Saudi Arabia? Why isn't the rest of the nations around it? Turkey? Why is it Canada? And so when you do any kind of digging at all, so the king of Jordan, King Abdullah, I think his name is, he outright said to the media, he's like, we cannot take any more Palestinians in, because if we do, we will disrupt the peace in our own country, because we will not be able to support them politically, we will not be able to support them economically, and we will not be able to house them or provide them for their needs. I'm like, gee, doesn't that sound familiar? We right now have so much political unrest right now over this situation. You add more people who are coming directly from that conflict. What does that do? What does that do to the peace and harmony in our own country?
Yeah.
It's a mess, and it's not racist. It's just how it is right now. We don't have the infrastructure. If we had no tent cities, we didn't have record high food bank usage, and people were not struggling the way they are to find a doctor and access healthcare, then we could say, yes, let's bring these people in and do it in a way that's respectful of them and the people that they're going to be integrating with, because that's the other part of it too. And we're not doing that. We're trying to look good for the moment and with no regard for how that plays out in the future. And that's been the way that this government has operated in CPP and in this and in housing and in every single portfolio that they touch. It's what looks good for the soundbite, what looks good for the media, the camera, smile, say the right appropriate, buzzword, and then no regard for the future.
And this is where things get really interesting, because I was down in the States talking to some friends, and they used to live in Canada. Now they lived in the States for the past 6 years or so. And they asked, like, what's happening up there? What's going on? And I talked, we actually gave them a gift. We got them a box of Peace by Chocolate, gave it to them. And they're just like, oh, this chocolate's awesome. I love this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, no, they're great. They've been doing great work. Syrian family came over during the crisis over there back in 2015, set up shop here, created a life for themselves. It was awesome. But you would laugh because it's now 2024 and Trudeau is still doing victory laps with them of what happened in 2015. Like, there's no recent stories of success of people coming over here. There's just, we're going to keep riding the Peace by Chocolate train because that's all that came out of it, because life has gone downhill since for anyone coming here. And we haven't created a great situation for them. We have not allowed a situation where they can succeed. In a lot of cases, people decide to go back to where they came from because it was so bad here.
Yep.
And these are the stats. These are the things that we're looking at. When you break it down, this is why. So we understand where it's very easy for the sake of a soundbite. Well, it's just there, they just don't like people who don't look like them.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, actually, we care more about them in some ways because we want them to have a good life. And if we can't give them that, then why are we bringing them here? Like, what are we doing? So that's where the frustration is. And these are the conversations that we want to have that are a little more coherent, because right now online is a constant battle of just yelling and name calling and frustration and tension. And we want to start bringing more of this in, of like, no. This is why we're frustrated. This is why we're mad. And this is why we need to see change now.
Yeah, and it's a frustration not with the people. It's the frustration with the performative identity politics.
Yeah.
Because look at the folks who came from Ukraine who are now saying, we're going to take our chances with Ukraine again because we can't survive in Canada. We're going to be like living on the streets here soon. Mm-hmm. Like, they left a country that's actively at war, which would be the same as the Gazans, to come live on the streets in Canada. Like, how is that dignifying? Like, it's not. And they're white people. You know what I mean? Like, it's not about the race. It's about the fact that you're immigrating to a country that cannot support you. And that's what's making everybody angry. It's not their race. It's not the fact that they're immigrants. It's the fact that we can't support ourselves and yet we're trying to support others. It does not make sense.
Yeah, it takes me back to when Nova Scotians were really upset with Ontarians moving out here.
You love that one.
Well, it's because it's a very good tangible example of where people are typically fine until you start infringing on the way they do life, the way they understand things. You start changing the skyline a little bit in Halifax. You start changing how they knew things growing up. That's when people get upset. If you don't do that, then they welcome in outsiders, no problem. And that's just a small scale of something like Nova Scotia. Canada's now facing that at a larger scale. And that's where you're starting to see a lot of people who are just like, when resources are scarce, that's when you can start seeing things get ugly.